Okay, cool. Okay. Good morning and welcome to Backyard Naturalist. Today, we'll be talking about the 72 season. So we're going to be talking about the Japanese and Chinese concept of micro seasons. But before we get started, as always, we greatly appreciate viewers like you for being Backyard Naturalist subscribers and supporting this program. And if you're not already a Backyard Naturalist subscriber, you can become one. We have seasonal and annual subscriptions available, and they get you weekly lectures, automatic access to weekly lectures, monthly field trip, and a subscriber appreciation party, as well as a fun discount to our summer course, which I'll be talking about coming up here. Our next field trip is going to be with a former speaker, Allison Donnelly, professor at UWM, and we'll be exploring Downer Woods on April 27th. So look out for more information about that from Tim. I'm going to post all the links to everything I'm talking about today so you can sign up. But before we go on a field trip, if you need something to do tomorrow, we have partnered with Milwaukee Riverkeeper to host this environmental and social justice film series. Tomorrow at the Washington Park Library, there's going to be a film called Inhabitants, Indigenous Perspectives on Restoring Our World at 1:30. It's a film that follows 5 Native American communities as they restore their traditional land management practices in the face of climate change. And then can't not plug Earth Week in the month of April. Earth Week is really big for us. It's going to run April 20th to 27th, kicking off with the annual Milwaukee Riverkeeper cleanup. You could join us at any of our locations or choose one closer to your neighborhood from 9 to 12. There will also be a clothing swap at the Riverside Park location and an advanced kayaking river cleanup with our community programs department at Three Bridges Park on the same day, and then a whole week of fun Earth-related events, including a fun Backyard Naturalist with David Wisdom. And then May 10th through the 17th is going to be our Brew City Birding Festival, a week of birdie fun, kicking off with our Green Birding Challenge on Saturday, May 11th, World Migratory Bird Day. You can sign up on our website. We'll also be field tripping out to Harrington Beach, Horicon Marsh, and Weir Nature Center, as well as having an art night, trivia night, a game night, and a special keynote lecture. And we talked about this briefly, but we'll be hosting a summer course that's focused on habitat biodiversity and nature journaling. This is going to run July 8th through the 20th. It's called Stepping into Ecology. And I'll read our little program description. So join us to discover a variety of terrestrial and aquatic habitats where we'll observe patterns, learn about natural history, and discuss ecological and evolutionary questions. Over 6 sessions, we'll explore our parks, tap into our creativity, and connect with nature and each other. This course is designed to sit at the intersection of science and humanities. So while we're learning a lot about ecology, there will also be elements of art and mindfulness that will encourage you to pursue. All are welcome. And then finally, I'll plug our next upcoming eco travel trip. August 2nd to 11th, we'll be doing an accessible trip to Costa Rica. So this is perfect opportunity for people with mobility challenges and other challenges to join us on a very specially planned trip. But we'll get into what we'll be talking about today. So most of us measure the year by the seasons, so from summer, autumn, winter, and spring. making those four major divisions. And these seasons are based on the weather, the ecology, and the approximate number of daylight hours that we receive depending on um, our location in the northern or the southern hemisphere. And these seasons result as because of the axial parallelism of the Earth's tilted orbit around the sun. And so during certain times of year, we get more daylight than others, and thus different weather patterns. The traditional Japanese calendar marks the passing of the seasons and the changes in the natural world. And so rather than making it very simple and dividing it into four major seasons, it's rather divided into 24 major categories, which are also known as solar terms. And these terms are further divided into three sets of 5 days, and they're divided based on the sun's movements. Historically, this was adapted from the Chinese solar terms by a Japanese astronomer in 1685. So a lot of it lines up, but this particular astronomer revised some of it, as you'll see, to better match up with Japan's specific ecological events. But for both cultures, it's a poetic journey that encourages a focus on the subtle shifts in the natural world through the seasons. And it starts in spring around February 4th. So although it's still bitterly cold, sprouts are appearing. And this time is seen as the demarcation in the year where flower buds are swelling, and despite the cold, you can sense the first signs of spring. And so I'll kind of rapid fire go through all 72, starting with where we are right now in the year. So April 10th to the 14th is known as this period. Well, backing up a little bit, we're in the solar term. So of those 24 solar terms, the term known as clean and bright. So spring, at least in Japan, is in full swing, and plants and animals seem to beam in the sunshine, which is why it's referred to as clean and bright. And so during this particular time of the year, wild geese fly north. In the next couple days, first rainbows will appear, and then we'll jump into a new solar term called the grain rains. This is late spring. It's the last spring solar term. And this is when you'll get first reeds sprouting. You'll have the last frosts, and the rice seedlings are growing. Peonies are blooming. And then at the very beginning of May, there's this transition to summer. So new solar term, beginning of summer, start of leisure season. That first week of May, frogs start singing, worms surface, bamboo shoots sprout, and then we get into the lesser ripening. This is when crops flourish and everything's full of life. Here, silkworms are feasting on mulberry leaves. Safflowers are blooming. Wheat ripens. And then we get into grain beards and seeds. This is the time of year when it's best to plant cereals like barley and wheat. The seeds grow bristle-like appendages known as awns or beards. And so first week of June, praying mantises hatch. Rotten grass becomes fireflies. Plums ripen to yellow. And then we hit the summer solstice, where we have our longest day and shortest night. This is the start of summer proper, in terms of our stricter positional base seasons. But once the summer solstice hits, self-heal withers, irises bloom, Crow dippers sprout. And then we get into the lesser heat, self-explanatory here. Warm winds blow the first week of July. We get the first lotus blossoms. Hawk nestlings leave the nest. And then we have the greater heat. This is our last summer solar term, and it denotes the hottest time of year in Japan. And this is the time of year that certain trees start to produce seeds. We had damp earth and humid air. This is in Japan, the typical time of the monsoon season. So heavy rains fall from time to time in August. And then we get into autumn. So the beginning of the autumn, days are still hot, but chirping insects and changing foliage hint at autumn's approach. And then that first week of August, we get cooler winds blowing. Evening cicadas are singing. Thick fog will descend. And then we transition to manageable heat. So the heat is beginning to abate. Insect songs at dawn and dusk are signaling the end of summer. This is the time of year coneflowers bloom and the heat starts to die down. It's time to harvest rice. And then we move into the solar term of white dew. This is when weather is gradually becoming more autumnal. The moisture in the air cools to form dew, which appears white. And so first week of September, dew glistens white on the grass. Wagtails are singing. The swallows leave. And then right around the end of August is when we get to the autumn equinox. This is when the sun rises due east, sets due west, and the day and the night are the same length. And so this first little micro season is when thunder ceases. This is during the equinox. Insects hole up underground, getting ready for winter. Farmers start to drain their fields. And then we hit solar term cold dew, where air becomes drier and the weather is generally fine. There's a sense of autumn deepening. Winter fowl like geese and duck make their way to Japan, and the sound of insects tripping fill the night air. And so wild geese return. Chrysanthemums bloom. Crickets chirp around the door. And then frost falls. So frost in the solar term is becoming more common. We're at the height of autumn. Maple trees and ivy are changing colors. And this is the last autumn solar term. And so we get our first frost at the end of October. Light rains sometimes fall. And maple leaves and ivy turn yellow. And so then we move into winter. And the first wintry wind heralds the imminent arrival of the season. We're in the solar term of beginning of winter. The mountainous regions in northern Japan see their first snowfalls. And we have camellias bloom. The land starts to freeze. Daffodils bloom. And then we move into lesser snow. So this is when we get light snowfalls. End of November, rainbows hide. North wind blows the leaves from the trees. And citrus leaves start to turn yellow. And then we enter the solar term of greater snow, and this is when the cold intensifies and winter really sets in. We're now at the middle of the winter season. And so the cold sets in, winter begins, bears start hibernating, salmon gather and swim upstream, and then we're here at the winter solstice. This is the time of year when we get the shortest day and the longest night. Winter's really truly set in and the cold is building. But at this point, the days are going to start becoming longer. And so we have self-heal sprouting. Deer are shedding their antlers. Wheat sprouts under snow. And then we hit lesser cold, like lesser heat, kind of self-explanatory. And we have a micro season at the beginning of January. Notice water dropwort flourishes. We get the spring thaw. Pheasants start calling. And then we hit greater cold. This is the coldest time of year where many parts of Japan record their lowest temperatures, but underground preparations for spring are really underway. We saw that with some of the micro seasons in the lesser cold term. And so butterburs bud, the ice thickens on streams, but hens start laying their eggs. And then at the very end of this is when we hit spring. And so from there, we have the beginning of spring. This is the start of the year. And it's still cold, but signs of spring are approaching. The east wind melts the ice. Bush warblers start singing in the mountains. Fish swim after the thaw. And then we enter a solar term known as rainwater. And this is when snow melts, rains return, cold weather eases, and the earth and the fields welcome rainwater's return, which spurs buds to sprout. It's time for farmers to start preparing for the growing season. And so our first microseason's rain moistens the soil, and then mist starts to linger. Grass sprouts and trees bud. And then we enter this next solar term of insects awaken. And this is when hibernating insects and other small creatures start to leave their little underground hiding spots. And so the first microseason, hibernating insects surface. First peaches blossom. Caterpillars become butterflies. And then the spring equinox. So like the autumn equinox, this is where day and night are equal length. And then the first microseason in this term, sparrows build the first nest. And then the first cherry blossoms and distant thunders are heard. And then we enter the solar term where we are in the year right now, clean and bright. So again, this is gentle spring sunshine, entire natural world seems to be overflowing with vitality. Things seem to kind of shine in the sunshine. And so the first microseason is sparrows returning. And then we get to where we are now in the calendar year where wild geese fly north. And so maybe some of this sounds familiar. This is by no means a novel concept. Traditional ecological knowledge is passed down in many cultures. It's particularly important in indigenous cultures. And timing of ecological events informs crucial decisions in these cultures, including when to plant and harvest crops, when to conduct rituals or ceremonies, and when to expect the arrival of specific animals for hunting and gathering. Indigenous people's understanding is often deeply intertwined with their spiritual beliefs and is a testament to the profound respect for the environment and the intricate relationship between humans and the natural world. Keeping track of the year in this way through these little ecological events that are happening is known as phenology in the scientific world. Um, this is the study of periodic events in biological life cycles and how these are influenced by seasonal and interannual variations in climate. And so in our modern world, studying phenology is really critical in gaining insight into the effects of climate change and the timing of key biological events and how these shifts have cascading effects on ecosystems. So this is a map of from a few days ago of the spring leaf anomaly. So you can see where trees are leafing out earlier or later in some places across the United States as spring moves northward. And so these maps are put out by an organization called the National Phenology Network. And thanks to them, we have things like spring leaf anomaly that are recorded and mapped. And what they found is particularly in the Midwest, what they're seeing is short distance migrants are arriving earlier. And I mean, this is something that we've talked about in just our day-to-day observations recently. But a 22-year study of bird strikes in Chicago found that the arrival of short distance migrants is correlated with warmer spring temperatures, whereas arrivals of long distance migrants are more highly correlated with continental scale climate patterns. And then another study that they did in Minnesota of 44 bird species over 40 years showed that 36% of species were showing earlier arrival dates. And this was linked to higher winter temperatures for short distance migrants. Additionally, from the Phenology Network, data sets out of Minnesota and Illinois showed there that out of 8 wood warbler species that they examined, most of the species did not change their spring arrival times. Only one species, the yellow one-rumped warbler, shifted its arrival time to earlier in both of these locations. So if the remaining bird species don't adjust their migration timing, they might miss optimal food foraging conditions because of warming climates, pushing leaf out and insect emergence earlier, which could eventually cause population declines in these species. Another example that's come out of the network in the Midwest is in Minnesota. Walleye have advanced their spawning dates by about half to a full day for each 1-day decrease in ice out date throughout much of the 20th century. So research suggests that walleye spawning may be a robust indicator of climate change impacts. This is like very data-driven research, but you yourself can track phenology, and many people do already. If you've been part of this community for a while, you know that we talk about things like we know it's Valentine's Day because the cardinals start singing around that time. But anyone can track phenology. It's as simple as just marking things on your calendar, but you can get more creative if you want. There are things like phenology journals where you can keep track of things like weather and things that you're observing, like juncos returning, when the first frost happens. You can get even more creative and create phenology wheels, which are like a fun art activity for people who are into nature journaling. Maybe we'll even do one of these in our little summer course. But if drawing or painting or isn't your thing, people also do embroidery, phenology wheels. But if all of this isn't really your thing, there's even simpler ways. They make books like this calendar journal, the Naturalist Notebook, where you can track phenological changes that you observe. You can also contribute to the National Phenology Network. They have an iNaturalist-like app called Nature's Notebook, where you make observations about seasonal activity of plants and animals. And this goes to a larger repository where researchers at the Phenology Network, as well as outside of it, can pull this data and do more research, like what's been done on short distance migrants and wood warblers and walleye. So yeah, so that is that is micro seasons. I'll stop sharing.